I didn't buy this to hate it, I swear. Silver Sable and the Wild Pack. Early on in the when in the channel, when I started getting back into YouTube and I started doing comic book reviews, I would intentionally buy things that I knew I was gonna hate just to review it. But then after a while, I realized that roasting isn't really my forte. And anyway, I want to spotlight like better things, like good comics, more so than bad comics. So I really didn't want to hate this when I bought it. I saw somebody on Twitter. I don't remember who. I wish I did now because they lied to me. But I saw somebody on Twitter say Silver Sable in the Wild Pack. It's actually not that bad. So I was like, I don't know anything about Silver Sable. Other than that she's a mercenary that's vaguely associated with Spider-Man. And I don't know, this could be kind of interesting. Maybe a female-led title that doesn't suck. Spoiler alert, it does suck. It sucks in a lot of really weird and stupid ways. So, we get this cover, and it's done in the style of Jim Steranko. And in case you can't tell that, you can see here the cover artist, Mahmoud Asrar, and underneath it he says, after Steranko, which I'm guessing means that he did it in the style of Jim Steranko. So in case you couldn't tell just by looking at it, he did it in that. So we flip the page. It says Silver Sable in the Wild Pack. I don't know what the Wild Pack is, but they're not in this. It's only Silver Sable the entire time. I guess at the very least, this is a self-contained story. You don't it gives you some backstory on her, although it doesn't give you like an origin, like a one-paragraph origin of who she is, which would have helped because, like I said, I know next to nothing about her. I remember seeing, I think, Doug Ernst's review of an issue of Amazing Spider-Man a few weeks ago, where it talked about this stuff here, about how she had to fake her own death and had to fight this other chick to come back because I guess she's actually royalty for this made-up European country. So then we turn the page and we see this person on a boat. This is actually a female, but you can't tell that necessarily. And then we get the plot, which is that this group of neo-Nazis has taken over a boat full of refugees and is holding it hostage for the release of political prisoners that this made-up European country, Simcaria, is holding. I will give them credit for at least a little bit of originality in that this group of neo-Nazis is apparently all female. You don't typically see that. I don't know who this writer is. Krista Faust. In fact, I don't know who any of these people are who worked on this. But it's still, I mean, this fetishism of refugees needs to stop, and this portraying of neo-Nazis as always the bad guys. Just all like every bad guy in the Marvel universe is somehow a neo-Nazi nowadays. It's like this needs to stop. Did you know that there were a bunch of bombings in Sweden this past week? You probably didn't hear about it, but there was 4 or 5 bombs went off in Sweden in the past week. Guess who was primarily behind them? It wasn't people that looked like this. So we get this chick, and she's Butch Lawrence Southern, and I'm kind of being facetious, but I'm also kind of not. Her facial structure actually does look pretty similar to Lawrence Southern's. It's just that she's about a foot taller and about 60 pounds more muscle than Lawrence Southern has. But as you may know, a few months ago at this point, Lawrence Southern and this group of white nationalists staged this event where they tried to blockade a refugee boat from coming in. So now we go from... I don't know that this comic was inspired by that event, but it would not surprise me. So anyway, instead of doing a stupid publicity stunt where they just blockaded a boat, they are actually actively killing these refugees. And you'll notice that these refugees... it seems like it's about 50-50 male and female, when in point of fact, all of the refugees coming into Europe are about 80% male. Also, Simcaria, I don't know anything about Simcaria, but it sounds like a made-up Eastern European nation. A lot of Eastern European nations are not playing this game with the whole refugee thing. They are not bothering with it. Um, but apparently, the ruler of Simkaria, Silver Sable, is acting as a mercenary and is taking these people out. So anyway, they drag this one refugee guy into their room, and they shoot him on camera to show that they mean business. The only the only ethnic-looking neo-Nazi, which I don't know how that works, is the only one that has problems with it. So like I said, on the one hand, I have to give them at least some points for the novelty of having like an all-female neo-Nazi group. That's the kind of thing you'd see in like old women's prisons exploitation movies. But one thing about modern alt-right neo-Nazi white nationalist type is that they're trying to emphasize the differences between men and women. So they're trying to get men to be very buff and strong, and they're trying to get women to be more feminine. And the women that go along with this typically do fulfill that mold. So you're not going to see too many. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any that neo-Nazis that look like this with the weird side of their head shaved or the back of their head shaved and the SS logo tattooed on their head, but that's not something that modern day white nationalists would emphasize. So then Silver Sable goes on the ship and she kills the people, and then we go back to the beginning of the comic where she's taking this one punk looking female neo-Nazi, and so this one lady stabs her, looks like pretty deep in her left leg, and Silver Sable knocks her out with a bunch of sharks swimming around, and she goes to the boat, tries to get out of the water before the shark gets her, and the shark gets her. So this shark looks like a great white shark. I can't tell that exactly, but the way that it's drawn. Great white sharks are about 20 feet long and weigh half a ton. So if it bites into your leg even a little bit, you've just lost that leg. And you're going to bleed out and die. It's not going to just be a flesh wound, which does not affect her the rest of the comic book. I mean, I can almost see in my head Jim Steranko actually writing this, and how this would be a debilitating injury throughout the entire book, and she would have this internal monologue going on about how she would be trying to get past this, and it doesn't happen. This, like, her, what should have been a life-threatening injury and the definite loss of her left leg is not mentioned again. Okay, so then she continues infiltrating the boat. She kills this old woman. Freak. I forgot about this. I forgot. So, yeah, she says Silver Sable comes down and she lands on her left leg, which, once again, this should be basically useless. And, but it doesn't seem to affect her at all. And then she, the ethnic-looking neo-Nazi, is like, Silver Sable, you're my hero, what are you doing here? And she says, bam, Nazi punching is my jam. Oh my gosh. Once again, like, this fetishism of making Nazis into this ultimate bad guy in modern day, in current year, and making refugees into these just soulful victims of circumstance. No, I mean, you can't, if you look at the news, especially like alternative news media, there are everyday modern day problems with countries that have accepted large numbers of refugees from the Middle East, and yeah, I mean, even if you accept that in 30 years everything will just level out and it'll all be fine, which I'm not at all convinced of that. But even if you accept that, you cannot pretend that there aren't real problems with it. So yes, I mean, they do this sort of cartoonishly evil plot where they're taking them hostage on a boat and executing them one by one, but I have yet, like a whole bunch of Marvel comics have done this thing where they just talk about, refugees and stuff, where and not acknowledging the actual problems with them. They just go for this full cartoonishly villainous portrayal of people that go against that. I mean, freaking stupid Nick Spencer had the Red Skull say, like, basically point by point the sorts of things you hear on Breitbart every day. I mean, that's not neo-Nazi stuff to acknowledge the reality of the situation on the ground, which is that there are a lot of problems caused by is trying to assimilate these refugees that apparently don't want to assimilate. So the ethnic-looking neo-Nazi can't bring herself to kill Sable. It's funny how none of the other neo-Nazis that Silver Sable has come up against get the same sort of merciful treatment that the ethnic-looking neo-Nazi did. Oh, by the way, they keep referring to her as Silver Sable throughout the entire comic, and this is literally the only time that somebody refers to her as something other than that. Sablanova, I guess. I don't know how that's pronounced. That would have helped too, like just a basic introduction for who this character is, because, like you said, I mean, I don't know, and I know a fair amount about comics, and I don't know who this person is, other than that she's associated with Spider-Man. And not only that, from what little I do know about her, which is from, what was it, the video game Ultimate Spider-Man, she's just acting like generic tough girl rather than just a very experienced mercenary. And I also don't know what she does here at all. That somehow just simply pulling this lever down is enough to drain all of the water. I mean, she blew a hole in the side of the ship. How can you? The only way you can, you can seal off the compartment and pump the water out of the bilge, but you can't. How on earth is just pulling this lever gonna? Maybe I've never been on a cruise cargo ship like that. Maybe that has some basis in reality, but yeah, this whole book is just one huge virtue signal against neo-Nazis, and so there's a lot of like action stuff that's just not explained or not taken advantage of nearly enough, and then it just kind of awkwardly ends here. And, oh, look at that, she's saving all the poor bedraggled refugees that are gonna happily, I'm sure, assimilate into Simkarian culture and just, learn whatever language they speak and not do all the sorts of terrible things that you hear about on a near daily basis in countries like Germany and Sweden that have accepted large numbers of them. Yeah, I'm sure that that's not going to happen at all. So there's not going to be another one of these, luckily. Not anytime soon, at least. But this one, oh, Jesus, so stupid. It just don't make any sense at all. We get it. You think neo-Nazis are bad. Okay, so does, like, literally every other Marvel title. It gets old after a while. And there was nothing in here, like, you could have had anybody in here. You could have literally had, this could have been called Mockingbird, it could have been called Hellcat. Like, you could have had literally any other superheroine in here, and it wouldn't have changed things. There's nothing about Silver Sable's character, there's nothing about her backstory, it's just some vague stuff about these poor little refugees are in trouble, and somebody has to stop the neo-Nazis, and it has to be Silver Sable. So it's just dumb on multiple levels. I don't know. Tell me if you read this, tell me if you agree, tell me what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.